Hello, everyone. As always, welcome to tonight's parent chat brought to you by Balance in Mind. We are a group of mainly parents, but also professionals who are working hard to bring mental health resources to you and to be an extra layer of support for you, especially during this difficult time. My name is Sheri Gazitt, and I am the facilitator for you tonight for this parent chat. I'm a proud Balance in Mind member, and I'm also the founder of TeenWise. I'm a teen and parent coach. And we are going to have a lot of information that we're sharing with you tonight. We are so glad that you are with us. We encourage you to ask questions through the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of the screen for most people. Sometimes it is at the top if you're on an iPad. I don't know which is which, but if you hover around at the bottom or the top, you'll get kind of a layer of tools that are available to you. And then in the chat box, we're going to be asking you questions, and that's where you put the answers. That'll be in the chat box, which you can also find in your toolbox there. Tonight, we are talking about building confidence, and we have a special guest, Mina from Youth Eastside Services. Let me share my screen once more and introduce you to her. I'll give you her bio here. Sorry, I should have done that before I turned it off. But she is a YES counselor at the Rose Hill Middle School. She has previously worked at the International Community School, Redmond Middle School, and Inglewood Middle School. She loves helping children build their resilience and master their goals. She is also a parent of 2 kids in elementary schools in the Lake Washington School District. So she's in the same boat as many of you know, working to kind of balance the online schooling and being a parent and all of that fun stuff. So she knows what you're going through for sure. So let's bring Mina on to say hello, and then she is going to start us off with a meditation tonight.
Okay, so thank you, Sheri, and good evening, everyone. We do this to kind of help ourselves become more centered and be more present with what we'll be doing later in the parent chat. So you can start by closing your eyes if you feel comfortable, or just lowering and softening your gaze. And I'll turn off my camera for this portion too. And then I can let you know when it's okay to turn it back on. So next, take a deep breath and place your feet flat on the floor and really feel your feet in contact with the ground underneath you. And feel your weight in the chair and how the chair supports you. And you can place your hand on your abdomen or your chest and take 2 or 3 deep breaths, noticing how your body expands and contracts with each breath. And as you keep breathing deeply into your abdomen, I'd like you to breathe in for a count of 4, hold your breath for 4, and then breathe out slowly for a count of 4. And just keep that pattern going. In for 4, hold for 4, and out for 4. And if you start noticing any thoughts coming to your mind, try to stay away from being judgmental and gently let them go, and just focus your attention on the breathing. And if you are judging those thoughts anyway, you can let go of that too, without being hard on yourself. Just noticing and let it go. And we'll do a few more of those rounds. In for 4, hold for 4, and exhale for 4. Okay, and as you slowly bring your attention back to the room, you can reflect on how this practice has been for you, and what, if anything, is different. And you can start noticing the sounds around you. and slowly begin to make small movements and open your eyes, and then come back to the session. And thank you for participating.
That was great, Mina, as always. There was one week where we skipped that. I just totally forgot about it.
It happens.
And the whole
Sorry.
feel was different.
Yeah, it does. It is different. Yeah, it does help to be more centered.
Right, for sure. Okay, so let's get started because we have a lot to cover as always. And we're going to start today. For those of you who have been on for multiple weeks with us, we're starting with more of a presentation at the very beginning, maybe like 15, 20 minutes. But while Mina is presenting, still feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box, and then we'll have those kind of geared up for when we're done with that piece of it.
Okay, so I'll start sharing my screen now.
Yes, go for it.
Okay. Right. Okay. All right. So this is the, oops. Okay. So yeah, we're starting with a short presentation today. And the theme is how to build resilience in children by fostering competence and confidence. And the information presented here is closely based on the book, Building Resilience in Children and Teens by Kenneth Ginsberg. And I have you can see the cover in one of the slides if you want to take it as a reference. And before we begin, I wanted to mention a bit more about my agency in case you weren't familiar. So YES has been at the forefront of bringing mental health services to youth and their families for the past 50 years. And we provide evidence-based therapy, which means we use methods that have been proven by research to be effective, such as cognitive behavioral therapy and DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. And our staff are trained to provide co-occurring disorder therapy, such as substance use and, for example, depression or anxiety at the same time. And under regular circumstances, we are where the kids are, which is in schools, community centers. In addition to our agency in Kirkland, we have offices in Kirkland, Bellevue, and Redmond. But currently, in the current situation, all this has moved online. And we do continue individual and family counseling via HIPAA-compliant video conferencing platform. Our school-based behavioral health support specialists, such as me, offer office hours to all middle school and high school students. So if you have kids in the middle school and high school level, they can have easy access to office hours by a YS professional. They're all on the YS website. You can go there and check. I can put it up in the chat if somebody needs it too. In addition, a number of ongoing programs, such as the alcohol and drug education class, the nicotine diversion program, and the LGBTQ group, Big Glad, have also moved online. And we, in addition, engage to efforts such as this one to provide community education and prevention and help parents, families connect to valuable information, tools, and resources. So, before I move to the next slide, I wanted to ask you to use the chat to answer the question, what does resilience mean to you? When you think about resilience, what is one word or a few words that come to mind? And if you don't mind sharing those with others in the chat.
Great. Yeah, we hear that word thrown around a lot, and we kind of have this idea of what it is, but it's good to really stop and think about what really does it mean and what does it mean to us.
Yeah.
Okay, so we would ask that people answer that in the chat box. And I'll share those, Mina. If people end up sharing in there, we can let you know.
Okay, sounds good.
So, can I ask you a question about the services that you were just talking about?
Sure.
I know some of them are connected to certain schools, but anybody who's listening, can they contact YES to join the groups and to get counseling services, or is it limited to any certain people?
So the services offered through the behavioral health support specialists are limited to people who have kids in the Lake Austin School District. But anybody is welcomed. We do offer services throughout just to anyone at our agency-based services online, which are also individual counseling, one-on-one via HIPAA or video conference or telephone. Okay. So those you have to go through the agency. The ones that I mentioned, the office hours, are for students in a district.
Okay. And how do they access that? And we can put that up in the
Yeah.
chat box here.
If you go to the YES website, and I do have a link that I can put up in the chat when I can stop sharing my screen, and just navigate towards where it says COVID online resources, and go down to where it says school-based resources. And there is a whole, then click whether it's Bellevue School District or Leavenworth School District, because we have services in both school districts. And then when you choose the right one, then it will show you the list of all the office hours for each school. And
Great.
also offer groups, skill groups for kids.
Okay. So I want to let you know a few people answered what resilience means to them. So someone says being able to come back from a disappointment. So that kind of bounce back piece, right?
Yeah.
Resilience means having strength to get through challenging times, able to bounce back after setbacks. It means to be able to adapt to new things easily. And they also say their daughter sees a counselor at YES and loves her. That's great.
That's great, yeah.
It's resilience is able to keep going when something happens, to get back from a setback. Yeah, there's lots of great answers here.
Yes, you're right. You're all great answers. And then this is the definition that Merriam-Webster provides. So as we heard, like it's tending to recover from or just easily to misfortune or change. So a few things I want to mention here is the first thing is about the word easily. So it's great if it happens easily, but it's not the case for all of us or maybe most of us. And if we come by our resilience, via a more difficult way, I don't want us to discount that. It's still, we worked hard and we achieved it, and that's okay. It's just some people have a more difficult time, and that's all right. Sometimes it'll be easy, sometimes tends to make us feel bad, but it's okay to be struggling. And then one other thing about resilience, that it tends to be uneven. So we can be resilient in one sphere of our lives and less so in others. For example, maybe our child can be more resilient when it comes to academic problems and challenges and difficulties, and less so when it comes to personal relationships and challenges with peer relationships. And that's true for all of us. So being mindful of that can help us know where our strengths are and where opportunities for growth are. And it's also good to mention what resilience is not. And that is, it is not invulnerability, it is not perfection or isolation from all risk. It also is not emotional withdrawal. So there are things that may on the surface seem like maybe good to have, but in a way they do prevent us from true authentic resilience. So, and then
Mina, can I just say right there, it's so interesting to me that word easily is put in there, like you pointed out, because yeah, to me, it's almost like the harder it is, like the more resilient you are sometimes, that you keep bouncing back no matter if it takes you, all of your willpower to bounce back. That's like you're building up resilience that way.
Yeah, it makes it even more meaningful and even more kind of worth it. Yeah, I agree. All right. So again, if you don't mind participating in the chat and just answering the question, how have you as a parent earned your resilience, or what has helped you become a more resilient person, in a few words?
I'm going to put something in there myself.
Okay.
And Mina, are you thinking like situations we've been through, or like for this question, what are you looking for?
Maybe, probably, how have you approached challenges, or what has helped you become resilient? For example, what are lessons you have learned? Like what are maybe skills to have, or maybe what taught you those skills? Like how did you come by the way you define resilience? How did that happen for you? Like, did somebody teach you? Like, did you make your own mistakes? Yeah.
So Rashmi says, still working on it, which by the way, we all are, right? Every year is different.
Yeah.
Focusing on a day at a time when the future is uncertain. That is such an interesting, like a lot of times when you're having to get through something, you kind of have a timetable for it, but we do not have a timetable for this. Allison, your parent was sick for 3 years and passing away when you were a teenager. that's a tough situation, and you learn that if you can get through that, you can get through anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Patience in keeping things in perspective, meditation. Susan, we should ask you to lead one of our meditations one of these days.
Mm-hmm.
um, let's see, knowing my parents had to overcome hard challenges gave me confidence that I could make it through my own challenges. I love that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
taught from childhood just not to give up and keep going to achieve your personal goals. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
excellent. This too shall pass. Yeah, lots of great
Mm-hmm.
answers here. One day at a time, sometimes one breath at a time. I love that.
Exactly right. Yeah. So again, we see a lot of reference to hardship and being faced with that and finding our way through it, learning how to come out on the other side. So resilience, pretty much we come by it through difficulty usually, and that happens for all of us, whether it's our own or through somebody else. And then, so next to move on, so the book, Building Resilience in Children and Teens, does focus on the way we can help kids make their own mistakes and learn from their own challenges instead of us being there. So some of the ways that the author has highlighted are getting out of the way, the value of unscheduled time, boredom and play, and authentic success. So the first one, it's maybe rather difficult for us to get out of the way of our kids because all of us do have what we call the writing reflex or the parent alarm, as the author calls it. And we want to help, fix, and guide, and just make it easy for our kids because we don't want them to suffer. But every time we take over and then solve the problem for them or have our deal, they do it our way because we think that's the one that will really be good for them. We do undercut their growing sense of competence. Like they start to feel that they can't actually handle it. Somebody has to be there to do it for them. And then it helps that if we are aware that if we tend to jump in and take care of those things for our kids, we usually are operating from a fear or deficit mindset. We are afraid that they will get a bad grade on the assignment, maybe fail the class, don't get into a good college, and then maybe won't have a good job in the future. So this kind of escalates more and more. Subconsciously or maybe consciously, like we are afraid that they don't have what it takes to reach their own goals, or sometimes our goals we have for them. Therefore, we feel the need to constantly monitor and control. So we're kind of sending the message that they really can't do it on their own. And if you want to foster resilience, then our goal is for kids to emerge from challenging experiences with a positive sense of self and then positive sense for their future. And when they do, if they come to us with problems, or if you notice that they have any problems, we can then simply listen and then ask, how do you think you can handle this? What can you do about this? Walk me through what your thought process is on that challenge you're experiencing. And then when we do that, we can focus on concrete versus abstract thinking. Oftentimes, especially younger teens haven't reached the levels of abstract thinking yet. And concepts such as even like being successful or dependable or autonomous are all abstract concepts. And it's good if you can break them down in small concrete steps. For example, what steps somebody can take so that they then become dependable or successful. And that may be, instead of saying, be more, maybe just focus on turning the homework on time or calling parents when they're going to be late or, doing the chores they said they would. These are concrete small steps they can take and they know that they've done those, then they were successful in achieving something or they were dependable or they're working towards more autonomy. So we do need to, to help our kids move in that direction, to help them work with concrete short steps. And so some problems still do need adult guidance, usually around when the safety is involved. It's good to know that we can't just step back and let them handle everything on their own, but be mindful of how far is good for us to go and when they can take the lead. So next, the value of unscheduled time, boredom, and play. So as we currently experience, there is a lot of unscheduled time and maybe boredom in the current situation. And that, even though it can be seen in a negative light, it does help with creativity, it does help to have that kind of space for us to come up with our own ideas. It does develop having our own sense of agency for our children. And then playing, especially for younger kids, helps them, it's a way for them to process difficulties in life and then also rehearse different scenarios and also can help them build social competence. So if we focus only on school achievement and class and activities, we might be doing them disservice of preventing them to experience life on their own through play and unstructured time.
Mhm. And can I say something about that? Because right now you're right, like we're at home a lot. And so there's that boredom. But even when life goes back to quote normal, whatever that looks like, but when your younger kids especially have play dates, it's great to have it unstructured because they learn, first of all, they use their imagination, but they also are able to learn how to have conflict and to like decide things together. It's really good for their social skills that it's not scheduled the whole time and that you're not a part of it for the whole time.
Exactly right. And this is also a very safe space to make mistakes and to see like to see what happens when you do something and somebody doesn't like it and how to navigate conflict. So it's really safe because their kids are engaging in play and then they can just find their own way in that without adult guidance, which is really good. So authentic success. This is my third and last question for our tonight's participants. So if you could answer in the chat, what does success mean to you? When you hear the word success, what comes to mind? What is success for you? And I'll take some time.
Okay, let's see here. Success. Well, I said happiness and achieving my goals, but I think success is a lot more than that, but I would take a long time to type it out. Someone else says success is to reach a goal, achieving goals, self-satisfaction of a job well done. Yeah, so, and we're not getting as many answers to this one, and I think the reason is because it's hard to say what that is.
It is really hard, yeah. And it's so individual for each one of us. And that's why it's so good for us to be, maybe reflect what success means to us and also discuss with our children what it means to them and then have a discussion about that. And when we do that, be mindful that we don't only want to focus on accomplishments and achievements and, you know, status and position in society. We also want to include things such as somebody mentioned, like self-satisfaction from achieving your own goals, having meaning, well-being, resilience is part of success, generosity, compassion, the capacity to build and maintain relationships, or having a strong work ethic and commitment to you know, being tenacious and hardworking. Also, the ability to take constructive criticism can be really part of being successful, because that's one way we can move through challenges, is being able to hear when somebody has something to tell us and not be defensive about that. That's also part of being successful. So incorporating those in our definition of success will help us be more, kind of have a more holistic view of ourselves and our kids as, you know, human being, and also what having a successful life means, instead of just having a narrow focus.
Right, and I think it's important that our kids understand this, because when I talk to a lot of teens, the first thing that comes to their mind is that they go to a good school, get a good job, and by good job they mean high paying. So it's become very narrow as to what society sees as success, when there's so many other words that go along with it.
Yeah, it has become narrow. I would say like maybe self-sufficiency is also another word. And you're right, like having a good job and going to a good school are at the top of the list. And it's good to, in today's environment and the way things are, it's good to know that the way things were in the past, where you work and you have this one profession and you do it for life and you retire, those days are more or less kind of on the way out. And kids, even with the millennial generation, have to be prepared to have more than one professions in mind. Like have the flexibility to apply that to more than one field where they work, because things do happen, changes and challenges do come, economic crises as we see, health crises do occur. So it's good to be available to know how we can be flexible with how we define success, and maybe with that will also determine how we pursue our goals into education and career further on. Yeah. So I want to end this this slide with a quote from the African American educator Booker T. Washington, who said that I have learned that success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles overcome while trying to succeed. It really kind of brings into mind that it does take a lot for some people to be successful, and then that if they haven't reached as high as others, it depends on where they started. And this is how you can measure success too. All right, so moving on, praising and criticizing. So these are a few, so this is really good to be mindful of how much and what kinds of praise we use when we speak with our kids, because we do want them to build their own internal sense of accomplishment. And it is important that we offer some praise, but also let them be their own authority when possible. So because we don't want them to work constantly that they please us. We want them to be mindful of their own values and priorities. So when we give praise, it's better if you focus on the effort and make it specific rather than offer general praise, like great job, you're so smart. You know, that can feel good, but isn't as good as being specific about, wow, that's a really good essay because you have, you know, really good arguments and you really support your main idea. That helps them feel good about their own achievement more. And here I also want to make a distinction between praising and giving an affirmation. And affirmation is a concept from the motivational interviewing. It's not it's kind of a theory model maybe, but it ties the praise to the kids' own priorities. So then instead of, so we make it explicit. So you're not doing this to please me, you are accomplishing your own goals. So maybe having a good essay was important to the student, and then good way for accomplishing your own goal. So it's not something that you want to make me happy about, right? Criticism also does tend to put kids on the offensive. So the less we can use it, the higher the chance that they will hear what we have to say. And maybe instead of giving criticism, we can just catch them being good or define the problem behavior with the positive opposite and then praise that when it happens, instead of punishing the negative, which I think we've mentioned some of the previous chat sessions. We also want to be aware of giving backhanded praise, such as we say something nice about a kid and then we say in the end, so you finally did it, now was that so hard? Or you say, why can't you do it more often, right? So these are always kind of make you feel, kind of undercut the tone of offering genuine praise, because you kind of ends a little bit of a negative note there. Mm-hmm. And also sometimes with teens, especially those who are ambivalent or have a hard time making steps in the right direction or making positive change, if we are too happy or too excited about them finally doing something that they really were hoping they would do, can really backfire, because it can really cut to the ambivalence. And if we start being so happy about one part of the, you know, what they're struggling with, they may go towards the other part. So you want to be acknowledging of their good efforts, but then still kind of holding back. So it's not about us, it's them doing what they want to do. So being mindful of this can be really good in terms of developing their own resilience. And the next one is choreographed conversations and role plays. So here, those are kind of like casual conversations where we take the child for a hypothetical scenario and then help them come up with their own solution on their own. So it can be done while we play a game, or we cook a meal, or some kind of a craft, and just kind of weave in some scenarios such as, what if that happens, or what if your friend tells you this? And maybe you say, okay, I'll be your friend, and start, you know, playing the scenario. And it's best if it's a neutral team, so not something that directly involves your child and their friend circle. Maybe something from a TV, like a plot from TV or a book, or maybe somebody else's life that you know about. You can just discuss hypothetically what might happen if that's somebody says something or does something. All right, and then moving on to skills that help with building resilience. 3 really good ones are learning how to say no, and that may not be always easy for kids or for us as well. So it's then good to be mindful that if we can say no, at least and then practice maybe through a role play how to say maybe, or I'll think about it, and then you know, then prepare how to address it in the future when that situation comes up again. So another way or another technique to say no might be what is called shifting the blame, and the author really describes it very well in the book. So he says that, so tell your children that it's perfectly fine with you if they want to paint you as the meanest parent in the world, right? So if you're happy to be the bad guy, it will help them stay away from risky behaviors or situations. So giving them permission to kind of use us as an excuse, like, oh, my mom, she's so mean, you don't know what how, like she'll grind for like a whole month. I'm sorry, I can do this, right? So it's a way for them to stay face with their friends, but still stand up for themselves and kind of keep their own, don't compromise with their values. And then lastly, so and then next we have problem solving, which is just a way of being able to generate pros and cons of different options, and then different consequences. And also sometimes it helps to recognize that it can be, something can be both good and bad. So how do we work with that and how do we solve that? So lastly is being able to recognize manipulation. So here, where did my notes go? So help them understand just being able to figure out when someone might have an ulterior motive. For example, a friend may say, so if you're my friend, you'll do this for me. Just help the child ask themselves, what do they really want from me? Or is it worth compromising my self-respect? Is he or she really my friend if there are such conditions to our friendship? So being aware when that happens, and knowing that people might not always have their best interest in mind. And a good way to kind of sneak this in is also sometimes when you watch TV together and there is a commercial coming up, because commercials oftentimes, sell you one thing while claiming to sell something else. For example, you'll be so much happier and smarter and more beautiful if you buy our product, right? So just helping them deconstruct that and then look at it from that perspective can help them see that, yeah, actually the world, there can be double meaning sometimes. So it's good to be aware of that. So yeah. So lastly, I want to end with some questions that we can all kind of keep in the back of our minds if we want to help our kids become more resilient. So these are all ways that we can think about how we can help foster their confidence and competence. So questions such as, how do I help my child focus on his or her strengths and build on them? How do I let my child make safe mistakes so then they have the opportunity to right themselves without me protecting them? How do I communicate in a way that empowers my child to make his her own decisions without undermining their sense of confidence? And also, if I have more than one child, how do I recognize the competencies of each one without comparing them? I think it's really good to keep in mind as we are trying to incorporate this more into how we parent our children.
That's
right.
Can we go back to your previous slide? And I want to ask you a couple of questions on that one, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so you were talking about at one point the praising and criticizing and how we should try to just look for the positives, right? So how do we do that if there's a clear thing that they're doing that is not okay? So let's say, let me think of it, they're hitting their sister or something. So
in
what do you do in that scenario?
Yeah, so when it's about safety and aggression, then in those cases, it's perfectly fine to have consequences, and which are probably discussed beforehand, so the child isn't caught unawares and they know what's coming and they know what to expect. But when it comes to safety, it's good to be clear when the behavior occurs that's not acceptable, and then there are consequences. So that's kind of a bit of a different category than just focusing on the positive always. And then of course, if the kids are having a positive interaction, you want to acknowledge that and say, hey, you really had some good time today. Like, I really saw you playing well together. So good for you for being your own good company. And then so just focusing probably on both will be more helpful too. But of course, yeah, if it's about safety, we want to make sure that it's not okay.
Right. And you also talked about, when you catch them doing it the right way, to mention something. And I remember, I think one of my daughter's kindergarten teachers would say, instead of saying, don't do that, what they would say is, I'd like to see you sitting quietly in your chair. If the kid was loud or something, we can use that for all ages, right? If our teenager is being really snarky, we can say, I'd really like you to ask that question again in a more respectful way.
Yeah, that's a great way to kind of focusing on the positive and how we want things to be, rather than just, it's a great technique to use.
Instead of just don't do it. And then when we talk about choreographed conversations and role plays, how do we start that?
So that can be awkward sometimes. So I guess it probably will depend on the child's age and the connection between parent-child connection. But usually it's best when there's something else happening So we're doing something else, like such as going for a walk or cooking together or focusing on something else, playing a board game, and the conversation is kind of as a more in the background. And then maybe just bring up, hey, I heard this happening the other day to this person, and this is how they handled it. What do you think? How do you think you would have done it in their place? Or maybe we could share about our own difficulties. For example, this is what happened to me. This is how I shared it. What would you have done differently, or if any? So just kind of being more open and aware. Yeah, I think using examples from their life again isn't probably will make them a bit more defensive and they can climb up a bit more. So if you watch TV show together, like something that's appropriate for kids and you both watch it, and then something comes up, you can discuss it maybe afterwards. Hey, I noticed this happening. What did you think about that? What might you have been done differently in that situation? So just kind of hypothetically, and we don't want to belabor it and make it too obvious because then they will know.
Right.
Just kind of trying to be lighthearted and just open about it and just see where it goes.
When you did mention books, and so for the little ones, you know, elementary school, preschool, that's a really great way to start the conversation. If your child is having a particular issue, find a book that brings it up, and that's a great way to not make it directly about them, but then you can start saying, oh, that kid's doing this. What would you do in that situation?
Yeah, I agree that that's a really good way. I do.
And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is the how to say no, because I work a lot with teens, of course. And one of the things I like to do is make sure I'm giving them a juicy scenario, meaning that I'm bringing in all these variables. It makes me think back to the Just Say No to Drugs campaign that a lot of us grew up with. The problem was it didn't talk about, like, what if it's your best friend offering you something, or the guy that you really have a crush on, or you know, there's pressure for some reason. You're really having a difficult time fitting into a social group, and all of a sudden they're inviting you in. So I think it's important as parents to bring in all of those variables instead of you're just going to say no. Think about all that stuff.
I agree, because if in those cases it might not always be possible, and also you want to think about saying no not only to substance use but maybe in other areas. For example, when we feel like we're being taken advantage of, or there's just something we prefer not to be doing in the time. So just finding different ways that we learn how to kind of enforce or be mindful of our own limits and knowing how far we're comfortable going. But you are right. So for example, if it's your friend or the guy you have crush on, you might want to practice ahead of time. Just in general, that could be one way. Choreographed conversation can be used, or role play where you practice, you know, offering an alternative, or how to use your body language, or how to say just no thanks, just practicing just no thanks, or how to say, if the person keeps asking, then how to say, well, why is it so important to you that I try this? What will happen if I don't? Like, but then again, that could jeopardize the connection with that person. So if it's very important, we might be more reluctant to ask the question, why do you want me to do something?
Right.
I clearly am not comfortable with that. But again, it could be something that could be discussed.
For sure. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so let's go back to your list of questions. Did you want to go through some of those questions and give us ideas, or is this just something to reflect on?
Yeah, this is more for people to reflect on. And I guess if we had a different format, we could have a discussion around those. Like, people could share how do they see themselves, you know, how those fit into their parenting style, or what they are currently doing or wish to be doing in the future. But just with the webinar format, is not possible to that extent. So probably something for parents to take with them as they leave tonight, to kind of think about as they move forward. What are some things that they might wish to do differently, maybe, if they aren't already?
What we can do, Mina, is see if anyone's willing to raise their hand, and we could bring them on screen to answer the question. Sure. We want to give that a try. So what you'd have to do, I think, oh no, actually you can keep your screen up there, but we'd have to stop sharing the screen to bring someone up.
Okay, oops.
Okay, so I'm putting this out there to all of the people that are on tonight. Is there anyone who is willing to raise their hand, and we can call on you and bring you on screen to give an answer to one of these questions? Let's give them a second, Mina, so they can think about it. And then to raise your hand, what you do is you go over, like at the bottom of your screen, wherever your toolbar is on your device, and you can say raise hand. Come on, you guys. I know that you have good answers to these questions. Let's ask one specific question. Let's see. How about the second one, Mina? Is that a good one?
Sure, that's a good one. Yeah. So how do we let our kids make mistakes? How do we let them make safe mistakes? What does a safe mistake mean? And then so they have the opportunity to fix it themselves without having to resort to our help.
Okay. So is there anyone who's willing to, let's start with, what does it mean to make a safe mistake? Anybody willing to raise their hand and answer that? And I think you can do it without actually showing your video. Okay, no one is going to raise their hand.
Okay.
That is okay. If anybody changes their mind.
I can speak to that. So safe mistakes usually are those who have, more of a low stakes, not so much consequences behind them. So in my life with my kids, those would be if they're late for school, if they forgot their homework, or they didn't do their homework. So those mistakes I would let them make, even if I think it's not okay, but still it's something that I want them to experience the consequence of that. So then next time they know it doesn't feel good without me having to tell them that it's not a good idea, because I want them to be able to experience it in the world, and then they can make a different decision next time. For example, or if it's soccer practice, for example, they are on the soccer team, and now they have to be practicing in the backyard, their soccer skills and drills and everything. And if they miss those, then they won't be as good. And then that's something that they'll experience, because in my mind, while soccer is good, it's not the end of the world if they get dropped out of the team. So I'm willing to let them, have that risk of maybe not making it next year if they don't practice enough, because then they'll know that, hey, I didn't put the work in, and that's what happened. And then, yeah, that could be, usually the younger they are, the smaller the consequences for them. Like the older they are, the more consequence they carry. So that's why we want to do it is throughout, their childhood and young adolescence. It's easier to kind of incorporate into just kind of our style of parenting.
So one of the things we have to keep, wait, somebody was talking about, is that you?
It's Valerie talking. I can't raise my hand, but I wanted to say that you're so right, Mina, and it's so true. When they're young, the consequences are easier, but it's as important, if not more, when they're teens, to have those natural consequences and to try not to save your child. They forgot the paper they needed to turn in. You want to help them, but it's not always the right thing to do. I mean, it's a tough situation as a parent, but again, it's those natural consequences.
I agree.
Yeah. And what I've done in that situation, that exact situation actually, Val, is I might do it once and I will say, this is a one-time thing. I saw how hard you're working on it, but I can't do this all the time for you. So yeah, it just depends on what it is. If it's like, I've had my kids call me in middle school, I forgot my lunch. I'm like, well, you're going to buy lunch. I don't need to bring it to you. It's, it goes back to, Mina, what you were saying at the very beginning. The reason it's important that they're building up this resilience is so that they have the life skills later to be able to bounce back and to see the natural consequences. It's so key.
Yeah. And then develop their own resources, how to work. For example, if they forgot their lunch, they can have to now go and buy it. And then that's okay too. I mean, it happens sometimes. It's not the end of the world. It's okay. It happens. So.
Exactly. Yeah. And what's really happening right now, because we started out with helicopter parents around, then we heard about lawnmower parents, and now we're hearing about snowplow parents, which is where you're just clearing any obstacles, any uncomfortableness. And the end result is that kids are getting to college without the skills to navigate emotional ups and downs, academic failures, any sort of hardship. So we have to give them this gift of having the hardships and dealing with them.
Yeah, I agree. I actually did find a quote about that in the book here, so I could read it. So and that's about the pressure of having the perfect college resume. And the author says, so if the pressure produces individuals with perfect resumes but crushes their creativity and interferes with healthy development of their interpersonal skills and capacity to rebound from setbacks, their long-term chances of success are seriously harmed. So yeah, it can present the perfect, prepare the perfect college resume, but then the price paid for that is, because if we go from fear, then that really does stifle the creative part of ourselves, because we are so focused on achieving those certain specific limited goals that we don't lose track of what else is there. Or we so focused on academic successes, we don't ever play with our friends and don't ever have unstructured time with them. We don't develop those communication skills that are so crucial later on in the workplace and in life. So those are things that sometimes fall by the wayside if you have a really narrow definition of success and pursue it very kind of to the exclusion of other things.
Right. Yeah, it's so true. We've got to allow them to be uncomfortable and deal with these things.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Let's talk about how do I communicate in a way that empowers my child to make his or her own decisions without undermining their sense of confidence?
Okay. So do you want participants to have a chance to answer, or?
Yeah, let's do both. If anybody wants to raise your hand and come on, that'd be great. Or you can type it in the chat box, and then we'll have you dive in and talk a little bit about that. Let's see. So someone is saying, if it's my fault, I'll save them. If it's their own fault, I'll let them face the consequences. For example, with my elementary kids, if I oversleep, I'll drive them to school. If they miss the bus because they're dragging their feet, we walk to school, even if it's a 45-minute walk. Yeah, that's true.
And that also tells them that they can do it. Like, even if they miss the bus, they still can get to school. And even if they're late, even if it's unpleasant, they were able to do it. So.
All right. So why don't you answer this question for us? Like, how do you do this? How do you communicate in a way that empowers them?
Yeah. So a great way to start will be for us to kind of be able to have the message that we do trust their own abilities. We believe in them, that they can face the challenges. So instead of us lecturing them on this is how you do things, this is what you have to do, this is the best way to do it, we say that you have had experiences in life that have taught you things, you have learned from them. I believe you can do it by yourself. And I believe if you need help, you know how to ask for help. And I'm here, I'm available if you want to come to me, or also maybe make sure that they have other adults in their life who they can ask for help, whether it's older relatives, cousins, uncles, or family members. So we aren't the only one, but it kind of goes in a different direction. But again, being respectful and mindful of their own goals and values for themselves, and then just trusting that they can get themselves there. And they have the resources or know how to develop them if they don't, and know how to ask for help if needed. So this is a way to foster their own sense of competence and confidence, instead of us giving it, instead of a top-down approach, us giving it to them.
It makes me think about, some of you have probably heard of this, it's free-range parenting, right? So there's this one mom in New York City who allowed her, I believe he was 7-year-old, to take the subway. So they went together about, I don't know how far away from their own house they went, but the parents gave him a cell phone, gave them some money for, to get back and forth. And then also included a letter, I believe, saying, my parents know I'm here, here's how to, I'm safe, blah, 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 I can do this. And the son made it back by himself. And imagine the confidence that gave that little boy, that the parents are like, I know you can do this, here's all the tools you need.
I'm sure, yeah. And I'm sure it was maybe scary in a way, but also exhilarating to be able to do it by themselves. And the world is so much different when you are in it. It's kind of, seems like you're so much more present when you're doing it by yourself. So that's a great, I mean, probably 7, I would think might be a bit young, but still, like, they were being safe. They had the cell phone, they had like maybe they knew the neighborhood too. So yeah, I mean, I know things are different. So in my country, like, I started using the public transportation to go to school when I was second grade. So I was like 8 years old, I think. But that's different, and it's also different time, different place.
Yeah, and I read that story and I was like, yay for them. But I was like, would I ever do that with my own kids? Like the equivalent for us would probably be to go drop them in Seattle and say, find your way back to Redmond.
Yeah, that would
I
be
don't
something.
know. I don't know if I could do it, but I love that they did that for their kid. It's awesome.
Yeah, we just started letting our older one, who is in fourth grade, coming home from school when school was still in person. And that was difficult for me, but I think it was really good because he can just walk by himself, and just having the key to the house and opening by himself, it's all, you know, skills he can build.
Right. Yeah. I bet that was a good feeling. I can think of like when I was 21 was the first time I went on an airplane by myself. And I remember I was scared, but I like felt so grown up and so amazing, you know, that I could find the gate, I could get my seat, all that stuff. So that's awesome. Well, we are running out of time here. It's already 8:24, if you can believe it, Mina. So I just want to remind anybody, if you have questions, to pop them in the Q&A box here and we can look those up. What I'd like to do is Mina, if you can stop sharing your screen. Is this all the slides or did you have another one?
Yep, these are all the slides.
Okay, so let me just pull up here so I can tell everybody what's kind of coming down the pipe. We have these, of course, every, where are we on this? Sorry, guys. Here we go. Okay. And everything is going crazy. Let me share it again so that I can tell you what we have. So for next week, Mina, are you or Michelle going to be joining us?
I will be here next week too.
Okay, great. And so we're going to continue this conversation, right, of resilience?
Yes, we are.
Excellent. Great. So, and then tomorrow night, we're having a kind of a parent chat extra. It's a webinar with Mary Pat and let's see, Mary Pat and Marie, sorry. Oh my gosh. And we're going to be talking about the impact of COVID on college applications. People have a lot of questions on that. So you can sign up for that here with the tinyurl.com/BIM college. That'll be tomorrow night, and lots of time for questions. And then we have, of course, parent chats every Wednesday. And then if you have teens, we highly suggest that you have them watch the Teen Real Talk on Instagram Tuesdays at 4 o'clock. We have lots of ways that we are supporting all of you. And you can always email us and let us know if you have areas that you really feel like the community needs more support, and we can see what we can do and definitely get you some resources as well. Okay, let me stop this share here and hop back on. Excellent. Okay, this is really cute. So somebody was saying here, Anna's saying, I think I was 10 when I traveled by train to my grandparents 350 miles away, changing trains twice, but today's world is not the same. Yeah, but actually there's amazing like stats when you look. Today's world is actually safer. It doesn't feel like it because we get all the stats, but it's actually safer, something to remember. Well, this was great, Mina. Great information as always. And I look forward to the conversation next week that you're going to bring our way so that we can dive into this even more. And I hope everyone has a fantastic night and start, contemplating those questions that Mina gave us, and we can bring those answers back next week as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having me. Thanks. Bye.